Mobile World Congress brings us new phones.
And also a lot of talk about VR, but is it just talk?
Welcome to Vertical Hold, the tech show where we channel surf through the headlines and search the big picture. I'm Alex Kidman in Barcelona, and I'm here with a man who sometimes can't handle actual reality, let alone the virtual kind, Adam Turner. Adam, what's new in tech?
Time is up for iconic Australian retailer Dick Smith, with receivers preparing to close all 363 stores across Australia and New Zealand. After a fruitless search for a buyer, the 47-year-old electronics retailer will close its doors for the last time by the end of April, with a loss of almost 3,000 jobs.
MasterCard has unveiled a new way to unlock your phone for online and retail banking applications, with a selfie. The idea is that your phone uses facial recognition as one part of a multi-part authentication mechanism to keep your purchases safe. In order that crooks can't just use photos of you, the system relies on you blinking at the screen as part of the verification process.
Facebook is jumping on the emoji bandwagon, introducing 5 more smiley face style symbols that you can use to respond to Facebook messages when words fail you. Dubbed Facebook reactions, the new love, haha, sad, angry, and wow emoticons were designed in response for calls for a dislike button to eliminate that awkward moment when you want to share something but don't necessarily like it.
Telstra announced at Mobile World Congress that it'll offer a 4G LTE hotspot this year, capable of a theoretical 1 gigabit per second download speed. The device, to be produced by Netgear, is apparently hockey puck shaped, and will also act as a backup battery for your phone, as well as a hotspot for up to 20 concurrent users.
So Alex, do we really need more emoticons on Facebook when like just doesn't cut it?
Look, I look forward to the day when all human interaction is done via emoji. These words that we've used for thousands of years are clearly inadequate to display the kind of intention that we have.
Yes, that legacy English language that we're still hanging on to clearly has to go. I also look forward to our new emoji overlords. Not.
Look, to be serious for a second, in some ways this feels like a very overdue step, because certainly I think, as you mentioned in your news piece, there have been so many posts that friends of mine have put up where I've gone, oh, I want to say that I feel for them, but I don't want to click like because it makes it sound as though the thing that they're talking about is something that I like. I
don't like that your grandmother died, but I want to express something.
Yeah. The way Facebook's gone about it, though, with the kind of emoji-based approach, is perhaps not the best, simply because people associate different things with those emoji. People take them more or less seriously. I've already seen a ton of satirical pieces around it, and a ton of kind of kickback of people saying, oh, no, this isn't what I want to say either. And in some ways, of course, Facebook users will never be happy, but that's actually, I think, fair enough, given how much money Facebook makes off its users. Now, usually, we'd have a guest on to analyse the week's news, but given the time differences between Barcelona and Melbourne, that was a little tricky to organise. So instead, I sat down with 3 different Australian tech journalists who were also at Mobile World Congress to get their views on what the big news and big launches had been and where they thought particular products stood out. First of all, I sat down with News Limited's Jen Dudley-Nicholson.
I was very excited to see some of the Sony stuff that came out today. So their earpiece looked really cool. It did look like it was stolen from the movie Her, but I'm okay with that as long as I don't have to date Scarlett Johansson in digital form. And also their weird little projector thing that's going to tell me about my day when I wake up in the morning. I quite like that, although apparently it's a prototype and you can't look directly into it or it'll burn your eyes. The phones from Samsung have really impressed me so far, and I'm keen to test out the camera. Well, the camera's on both of them because they're the same, but it looks like the autofocus on them is quite fast, and I love the fact that the waterproof body is back. Not so fond of the fact that nobody talks about the infrared sensor as if it never existed and you can't control your TVs from these phones anymore, but still, I'll accept the fact that it's waterproof and move on with myself. LG has taken an interesting route in sort of bringing all these accessories and making their phone all about the accessories that you add to it. So I'm keen to see how that works in person, essentially. And Mark Zuckerberg seems to be just following me around, which is devastating. However, I do intend to ask him about Kanye's finances.
Then it was time to sit down and chat to Steve Fenech from TechGuide.
Yeah, I think, well, you can't go past Samsung. I think the S7, the S7 Edge, they've really delivered in terms of not only the new features, but also the features they've brought back. The fact that it's got an expandable memory again. Hello, yes, it's back. Also, the fact that it's waterproof too. I think that was something that customers missed last year and kind of, I think, cost them a few customers who maybe have been tempted away with the iPhone. So I think, no, big tick to Samsung. I was very impressed with the LG G5. A lot of people thinking, what's this modular design? I think it's a bold step on their part, the fact that yes, they're going to give you a unibody phone, but yes, you can replace the battery, yes, you can add on all these features. They've got all these cool companion products as well. I think LG are having a lot of fun with it this year, and I think customers will respond to that. Other thing that I quite liked was the Alcatel devices too, the Idol 4, the Idol 4S. I think from a retail perspective, the fact that you're going to get a VR headset as the packaging is a great sell, and for customers knowing that they're going to get that literally out of the box, or it is the box, I think that's impressive as well. I quite like too that Sony's approach to the Xperia X series, not only the phones but also the companion products, where it might sound funny, where they're trying to encourage people away from the screen with the Xperia Ear, so you can interact with your device, talk to it, get information through your earpiece. The other products like the Xperia Agent and the Xperia Projector, again, an experience away from the screen, projected on a wall, projected on a table. It's sort of the move to give you that information without burying your nose in the screen. The devices themselves, the Sony devices, I was quite impressed with as well. The X series, they're describing them as sort of a super mid-range, playing in the right space there. I think that don't reckon that they're going to have a massive chance against the Sonys and Samsungs, the Apples and Samsungs of the world. But in that right space, I think they're going to do very well at that super mid-range.
And finally, from Gizmodo Australia, Campbell Simpson. Now, the audio went a bit crazy on this one for reasons which escaped both of us. This is not Campbell's fault, but he's got some really interesting things to say.
So I think at Mobile World Congress, the three most interesting things that I think I've seen would be the Galaxy S7, so Samsung's new phone, the LG G5, which is a phone with a completely different approach to innovation, and the Huawei MateBook, because I like myself a Windows tablet. I like a nice thin device that I can take anywhere. The MateBook's an interesting one. It's not exactly what people think of as mobile. So the thing with the MateBook is it fits into that MacBook-esque category where you have a very small device, but you need to sort of start stacking on extras if you want to start making it a little more versatile. I think everything, including the case and the keyboard and the USB-C breakout box, they're all optional as far as I'm aware, so you can buy just the tablet on its own and have a touch screen, something or other, but I think you need to spend a little more to make it worthwhile. And the LG, look, I think I've written about this on Giz. I think it's by far the most interesting smartphone launch of the show. I say interesting because it's something new. It's something that hasn't been done before in sort of a mainstream phone release. We're saying that the G3 and G4 being quite sort of straightforward, good, honest phones, and that's what the Galaxy S7 is this year. It's sort of refinement of the same sort of idea. But the modular approach, I think, for LG, I really do hope it will pay off, because it's nice to see a bit of innovation, nice to see something new. I think what they do need is some more compelling modules, basically. They need something a little more exciting than a hi-fi DAC and camera grip. I can see the utility of both, but even then I think they need something with a little more punch.
So, Alex, you've spent the week in sunny Barcelona. What have you seen that grabbed your fancy?
Quite a bit, but what's been really interesting here is the different ways that the different companies have kind of evaluated what mobile actually means. So, for example, you've got Samsung. They've got the S7, S7 Edge. These were heavily rumoured, and yes, they released them. And yes, they did silly things with VR and Mark Zuckerberg at their launch, and that was kind of cute in a way and kind of creepy in another way, but they very much kind of played it safe. The S7 is an improvement on the S6, no doubt, but it's very much kind of the iterative improvement there. Then you had LG, and they've gone down this interesting modular route, and I love them for it. It's a really interesting idea. I'm not 100% convinced that the implementation is quite right just yet, and it'll be fascinating to see whether or not they stick the long road with this one, because any phone like that has a modular approach where you're saying, please buy all these additional accessories, you've got to support them for longer than the average phone's lifespan, simply because people are not going to want to spend money on a premium smartphone and on add-on gadgets and then discover in a year, oh yeah, those things, they only worked with the G5. The G6 is something completely different. So they've kind of set themselves down a very different path. Yeah,
that's fair enough, because I mean, think about all the odd, unusual hybrid gadgets we've seen in the last few years, these Frankenstein things that they said, oh, this is the next big thing, and then they've kind of been a flop and disappear without a trace. Bad enough if you bought one, but if you invested in something like that thinking it would be an ongoing ecosystem, then you would have got really burnt. So yeah, I see what you mean. You need sort of the promise of long-term support. You don't want to just jump into it today and hope for the best.
Yeah, and I mean, Sony took almost the middle ground from that. They released their X series, which are just their replacement for the Z series, more or less, going from mid to premium, and they're fine little phones from what their hands-on time I've had. But they also released a bunch of personalised gadgets, but these are ones, unlike LG's approach, that will work across other Android devices. Sony's very keen to point this out, that these devices are intended for any Android user. Obviously, they'd prefer if you bought a Sony phone to go with them.
Naturally.
But they've taken that much more kind of measured approach. Meanwhile, Huawei, for example, just said, well, you know what? Tablets and laptops, they're mobile too. So they released the MateBook, a Windows 10 hybrid laptop, which was, again, people expected it. The rumour mill had broken that one before Mobile World Congress, but it's still an interesting interpretation of where mobile sits in this place. The other big trend, though, that almost everyone had a play on, from LG to Samsung to even kind of entry to mid-level players like Alcatel had, and even HTC, who didn't really announce much of note that we didn't already know about, was VR. Now, we've both had a bit of experience in the VR space, but VR was one of the big themes of Mobile World Congress. But again, everyone's got a different take on it. Adam, what's your take on VR?
I think this is finally going to be the year of VR. For a few years, we've had the year of talking about VR, and now we're going to have the year of actually seeing VR, being able to go out and buy this stuff in the shops. They've all got their strengths and weaknesses. I think I really like the PlayStation VR because it's going to be the whole package. You'll be able to get the PlayStation, you'll get the headset, it'll work with the hardware, you'll buy a few games, you'll have everything out of the box. I really like the HTC Vive, just the physics of it is gorgeous, the time I've spent with it. But if it means I've got to spend a couple of grand on a new computer that will hopefully be up to scratch, then that's a really big ask if I don't have a really good use for it. So this is the year that the rubber's going to hit the road, or whatever the phrase is they use, and we're going to see what's actually out there and what works and what doesn't.
Yeah, look, I mean, I had a demo of Vive in Barcelona just yesterday, and it's an incredibly impressive system, but you're right, for the money it would want to be, and I think Oculus falls into the same position. If you've already got a really nice high-powered PC capable of running it, then the marginal cost of its VR is not so great. If you don't, it's a much more expensive proposition. And I think what we're also seeing here is the battle lines being drawn. When Mark Zuckerberg took the stage at Samsung's event, he talked at some length about the power and the potential of VR and the growth of things like 360 video, which is lovely, but the Gear VR sits in that kind of middle ground between what I'd call the kind of good VR solutions, which are things like the Vive and the Oculus, for which you pay a definite premium, and then you're very much your entry level, this is kind of what VR can be like, which is where, for example, Alcatel had an interesting little hook for their Idol 4 phone, in that the box that the phone comes in is a VR headset, but it's a Google Cardboard-esque VR headset. It's a bit cheap and cheerful, and I mean, it's a nice enough hook for the phone. It's not a terrible thing, but it's not a great VR experience. The thing that disappointed me was one of the add-on gadgets for the LG G5 was a thin and light, it's very light, one of the lightest I've ever tested, VR headset. The problem was, at least at the demo stage in Barcelona, it really wasn't very good. It let in a lot of light, and as soon as you can see the outside world as the outside world, not a pass-through mechanism, then you're not in virtual reality, you're just looking at a viewfinder.
Yeah. I saw photos of it. I haven't actually had hands-on time with it, but straight away, from having tested a lot of VR handsets, I could see the problem with it. It's not much bigger than Geordie's visor out of Star Trek. It's not going to keep out all that ambient light, and with that constant reminder of the real world, you're losing most of the effect of VR. The whole idea with VR is to sort of, cut off the light, cut off the world around you, and immerse you into that world. So yeah, I think they might have to rethink that one in the long run if they want it to compete.
Yeah, and I mean,
others.
the thing is, they haven't announced a strict time frame for the G5, so maybe they'll take that feedback on board, because I'm sure I'm not the only one who commented that way. Maybe they'll redesign it a little bit, or possibly, because launch experiences are not always the best way to do a full evaluation of anything, because there's thousands of other journalists pushing behind you, sometimes stabbing in some cases.
Yes.
And maybe there's a setting or a lever or something that I needed to adjust to fully kind of squish it in on my glasses. But at this point in time, yeah, the LG one was a little underwhelming. But there is that divide between the kind of, here's the basic vague idea, Google Cardboard-esque way that you can do VR, and then you shift up towards the Oculus. And I think, the Gear VR is a step in that direction. But the gap between the Gear VR and something like a proper Oculus or the Vive is immense. But then so is the price gap.
I think I've said before that once you get a taste of actual free roam VR, where you can put on a headset and you can stand up and walk around and interact with your environment, then this idea of sitting in a chair with a phone pressed up to your face and just looking at things doesn't really cut it.
Well, that just about wraps it up for this episode of Vertical Hold. Thanks to all of our special guests for being part of the show this week. And remember, if you've got any comments, hit us up in the comment section on YouTube, via Twitter, or the Facebook Vertical Hold page.
Thanks for joining us. Remember, if you like what you hear, hit that subscribe button.